Hello, everybody. I'm Dana Brooks. Welcome back to another EmPower Hour by Facing Brooks. Today, we've got a pretty serious topic to talk about, and it affects us more than we think it does. It hits pretty close to home, and that's human trafficking. So, on a subject as important as this, we wanted to get some experts and people actually know a good bit about it. So, let me go around first of all. Welcome, everybody. Again, I'm Dana Brooks of Facing Brooks. I'm joined today by Carrie Roan, my law partner. Hey, Carrie. We've got Lori Finn, our marketing director, is here. Hey, Lori. And the very important Rose Caswick, our
very important.
Yes, our very important drink of the week maker. Rose, tell us briefly about what our drink is tonight. Let's get started.
Yeah, basically we are drinking Manhattans. My ice has melted, but it's bourbon, vermouth, bitters, and a maraschino cherry. You said you wanted a cherry last week, so we got you a cherry.
Cherry matters.
So cheers.
Ooh, that's good. It's a little, it's a bit much for Thursday.
Yeah.
That's more of a Friday drink.
It's a drinker's drink. It's a drinker's drink.
Rose, now, what feminist is that drink for?
Yeah.
That was inspired by Joan Didion, a feminist essay writer. She is known for some biographical type essays. She wrote Year Magical Thinking.
Yes.
She's just kind of a tough broad, so the Manhattan suits her.
Yeah, she is a tough broad. I remember that book. I think that's the one she wrote the year after her husband died.
Yes.
Pretty acclaimed book. So cheers, Joan. That's one tough broad. Now, back to our topic. We're talking about human trafficking, and people, always think that happens to other people in bad neighborhoods or from bad families, or doesn't happen to me. Nothing could be further from the truth. So we have some people here tonight, and we're very honored to have the Honorable Diane Williams-Cox, City Commissioner. Thank you for joining us, Diane.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
And I know that this is a special interest of yours. You and I put together a breakfast one time downtown and got a lot of community leaders. Yes. And it was eye-opening to me. I left there going, oh my goodness, I did not know. And I know you've got a special interest. You want to just say something briefly, introduce yourself, and kind of tell us what your interest is in human trafficking?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be on your show and to talk about this. This is a very serious topic. And you may think it's not happening near you, but it could be happening right next door. It could be happening in the grocery store. It could be happening at the football game. It could be happening anywhere, even in little old Tallahassee. Wherever there's major transportation or major events, it is happening. Florida is the third largest state. And of course, it's happening here big time with all the big events. We have the Super Bowl and all those things. It's happening. And you're looking at it and you just don't know it. So hopefully you'll learn more about it and learn how to recognize and try to get folks help. And I'm currently a city commissioner here in Tallahassee, Florida. But my previous occupation was working with an organization that helped to help with the sexual exploitation through trafficking and other means for children ages 10 to 24, children and young adults. And so it's that serious that we have to have programs and funding to try to help help people recover and try to provide education to prevent it.
Yeah, and I appreciate the work that you're doing, the leadership you've shown. We have a guest with us tonight, a woman who this is her life, this is what she does. Her name is Micheala Denny, and she is with the Open Doors Outreach Network, which is part of the Voices of Florida. So Micheala, you have a great responsibility in terms of education and awareness piece. Could you, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself, what got you interested in this line of work and what you do to help people every day?
Certainly. Well, thank you for inviting me to talk today, and then also just for highlighting this really important issue. I think it's important, like what Dana said and what Diane said, in terms of recognizing what human trafficking is. And the particular thing that I focus on with the Open Doors Outreach Network is commercial sexual exploitation and sex trafficking, that it's happening right here. And it doesn't look like what the media often portrays it to look like. So you see an image about human trafficking, you see someone with chains, ropes, beat up, looking, etc., very meek, etc. And the reality of the situation is that individuals are trafficked right from home. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have to move from place to place, and that trafficking, people are trafficked not just by strangers and are not exploited just by strangers, but it can be in the family. It can be people they know, you know, it's more common than you think, and I think it's important just when we talk about. You know, what are we talking about when we talk about commercial sexual exploitation? Really, there has to be some commercial aspect which means something of value is exchanged. In many cases, that's money, but that can be other cases, and other cases that can be needs such as food, housing, and basic living expenses.
Yeah.
And who doesn't need those right now, right? So
Right.
there's a lot of really vulnerable people out there, especially young people. But there has to be the added elements of either force, fraud, or coercion, but that's for adults. Now for children, which would be anybody under the age of 18, you don't have to prove force, fraud, or coercion in order to have that be a commercial sexual exploitation. And that's happening right here in our community. We serve in 32 different counties in Florida. We're here in the Big Bend. That's where I live in Tallahassee. Tallahassee is my home. But we provide services all over the state and trying to expand. And I'll tell you, and with our Open Doors Outreach Network service provider that we had here in Tallahassee until very recently, in the last year had served 40 different individuals. And that was primarily looking at sex trafficking, commercial sexual exploitation. And I can tell you that since our program began, which we began in about providing direct services in June of 2017, we've served over 1,000 people in our 32 counties. Wow. And rising. So we have 29 people in the field that are providing direct services, and we have waiting lists.
Wow. I hate hearing about the waiting list, but I am very encouraged to hear about the help. You know, I'm just going to tell you, just coming from my position of relative ignorance, honestly, I wonder, I think a lot about the loneliness part from COVID and the being online. And it seems like, I don't care who the predator is, they always try to groom their victims. They find them in certain places, they groom them, they get them in a position where they're susceptible. So I guess I wonder how much of it's online, because when I think of human trafficking, I almost think of, you know, like a U-Haul van full of, you know, immigrant people huddled in there, and they got to the country and they're doing whatever they have to do to survive. And I imagine there may be aspects of that, because didn't I see something like statistically they're going through massage parlors, that sort of thing?
Absolutely, yes.
What is happening? Because you think about, we had a story on, we have a TV show that airs right now in Jacksonville, and it's called Come Back Stronger. And the next show that we're going to do is going to be this Monday at noon. We'll also, you know, broadcast it so people can see it on YouTube and those sorts of things. But Carrie, didn't you interview Renata? And wasn't this, she had a very unique story, didn't she?
I did, and I was as ignorant as you say that you are now. So I thought of human trafficking like kids getting pulled out of their house, you know, through their window at night and being gone forever and being in a truck with all these other kids. And I really didn't understand what it meant. But I met Renata, whose husband left her and her kids, and she was working at Walmart overnight. And a guy started coming into Walmart and started talking to her. He became her boyfriend, and he said, you know, baby, you don't need to work at Walmart anymore. I'll pay all your bills. I'll pay for the kids. And then he started having parties and allowing her and encouraging her to have sex with other people at these parties. And then he started providing her with drugs because, you know, what he was doing to her was upsetting her. And she got hooked on drugs. Kids got taken away from her. And he was like, basically, I'm going to kill your whole family if you leave me. You can't stop now. You have to do this so that we can pay our bills. So then all of a sudden, you know, a few years goes by and she's a prostitute and having 10 or 12 partners a day. Oh. And he was threatening to kill her and her mother and her children if she ever left him, and did this. And you know, I don't want to give her story away, but it was so profoundly impactful to me that this happens to people just like me, just like people listening that might be vulnerable at a place in their life where they could be victimized by somebody who claims to be their boyfriend. That to me was so shocking to hear. And it's really interesting, you know, if anybody's watching, can watch the show when we post it on our social media stuff, but the way that she got out of it and now what she does with her life is she helps other people who are in human trafficking situations out on the streets, forced prostitution, and gets them into a place called Rethreaded in Jacksonville, which rehabilitates them, gets them back into the workforce, provides them counseling, all that type of stuff. But to me, that was so unlike what I thought human trafficking was.
Yeah.
You know, the interesting thing that, as you mentioned, that I started thinking about, the difference between drug trafficking and sex trafficking is that the drug you can only use once, but with the sex, it's reusable. And so have 12 partners a day, really that's inhumane. That is inhumane. But because of the nature of what they do and the fear and the drugs that they provide, this is happening, and the person may not even be aware of what is actually going on. And Micheala, there's also another survivor in Jacksonville whose story was on, I believe, 48 Hours or 60 Minutes. I can't remember now. But she's also associated with the Rethreaded project that you just mentioned.
Yeah, and actually she's now a survivor mentor with the Open Doors Outreach Network, and that's in Jacksonville through the Dolores Barr Weaver Policy Center. In fact, you're right. Yeah, there was a 48 Hours episode. She's an amazing, incredible speaker.
Remind me of her name.
Just joined us.
Remind me of her name.
Her name is Alyssa Beck. If you look up, I think it was 48 Hours. Is that, 48 Hours. Yeah, Alyssa Beck. She's pretty extraordinary. Her story is very, very sophisticated. Of course, took a lot of years to work through. Went from, being, put into jail to now being a survivor mentor with the Open Doors Outreach Network and doing national outreach all over the place.
And it's not uncommon for them to find themselves in jail. It's not uncommon because they're protecting their pimp. And they're doing whatever they need to do to protect them, and they end up in jail and lose everything while the pimp goes on to the next person, or he has a harem of folks.
That's right.
And it's not just men either. Women are doing this too, and you saw that in the case with the gentleman name escapes me now, the one that killed himself in prison.
Epstein. His old lady, the one who was his partner for all those years.
She was bringing folks in. Yeah.
She rounded them up. Well, allegedly. Lori, and let me hear from you on that. Do you know or have any experience with it, or what was your interest in this topic?
I actually had a family member fall into that, and I won't go into their name or anything else like that. We come from backgrounds where we just didn't have any money, and fortunately my mom and dad were able to kind of pick themselves up and create a great life and everything, but unfortunately some of my other family, they just succumbed to the circumstances that they were in. And I had a cousin who had the boyfriend, and he said, I'm gonna take care of things and do this, and she went with him, and she is in prison now. She actually followed him all around the country doing this kind of thing, and then they settled back in Tallahassee, and now she is headed to prison for robbery with murder, and she just got pulled into it, and she had so much potential. And he just assured her of everything.
This is what worries me about our girls. They can really get derailed over a guy. And I was always raising 3 girls. I was always so concerned about that, because it's almost like a Stockholm syndrome type of a thing. You become a willing facilitator of your own abuse because you don't see it.
I was going to say, what Lori was saying in terms of the scenario with her relative, one thing that's really important to think about that is because of the coercion element of this, oftentimes survivors are criminalized. They're criminalized because they've been coerced into behavior. I think Alyssa Beck is going to be an excellent example of that. Many of the survivors that we work with, they may be involved in criminal activity or illegal activity, and may be unwilling to come forward to seek help because they're afraid of the implications of that and what they're being coerced and told by their trafficker as well.
Right, and that's their family now. They've been removed from their family. They're estranged. They've been either turned against them, or the family's just had it with them and just finally wrote them off. And so this person who's controlling them, that's also their only family. It's almost like gangs sometimes. That's their family. So they're not gonna they're not going to go against the family. But the woman we had that's going to be on the show on Monday, she spent, I think, what was it, Carrie, 9 years in this life? You
Yeah,
know, how
almost
many
10
times
years.
did she probably try to get away? And she says,
Almost
I've
10
got the
years.
scars to show it. I mean, she got her, she got beat.
Yeah, he would find her and track her down and beat the hell out of her when she got out of jail. And then she was one of those women where she had to start getting other women into it as part of
yeah.
the deal, or he was going to kill her. He would strangle her, he would beat her. And that's part of what she had to overcome through her counseling, is the fact that she was pulling in other women as their friends to show them this life. And this woman was a PTA mom. She was a military mom.
Yeah.
And, we have to think about that when we're thinking about the network of women that we're involved in. And we have to look out for each other, because it's happening right in our backyard to people that look like us, talk like us, act like us.
And even if they don't, who cares? If you really are, and all lives matter, all lives do damn matter.
They do. And some of them not even, they're not even adults. They're children. They're children. And they're lured in by other children because folks are providing them with candy and clothes and to bring their friends. Yeah. So many of them are not even adults. They're children.
Yeah. And I that just, it just kills me. And then I also think, how many of these, I think Micheala may be able to speak to it, how many of these are male children? Because sometimes what I experienced when I was a social worker, I found that a lot of times homosexuality is not accepted in families, and a lot of children, especially male children, they would end up on the streets because they get kicked out of their homes. And then
I
the
think
next
you're
thing
absolutely right.
they're turning tricks for it. So how do you see the impact on that on our sons?
Certainly, and that's another myth about trafficking that we often have to overcome, is that trafficking only happens to people who identify as female. There is quite a movement in the LGBTQI+ community to really bring out the light on this issue. And yes, boys and men are trafficked too. And services that are available to them, like something like the Open Doors Outreach Network or other services that are available, oftentimes, they're not as likely to come to those. I think what's important about, when we're talking about all this, is where is this born from? How does someone end up in a trafficking situation? And there's lots of different scenarios, but, we have to think about the trauma that individuals have faced and what trauma leads to. And I have very few cases in which the individuals that I've worked with or know about just came from sort of a regular standard, stable household, and didn't have a need that they were seeking. And there's often a lot of childhood sexual abuse. But to your point about men and boys, Florida actually does have a safe house facility that's specifically for men and boys. It's in Central Florida, and that's fairly unique. Most of the safe housing that's available is going to be gender-based. It's going to be for females, and typically we're looking at people who are, under the age of 18. When you get older, it's more and more difficult to find safe housing. Yeah.
Rose, what are your thoughts on this? Did you work with any of these projects or anything in law school, or has this touched your life in any way?
I don't know that it's touched my life personally in any way, but I've got two kind of points to bring up, I guess. The first being, I was ignorant of it, just like the rest of you were. I did watch that Jeffrey Epstein docu-series on Netflix, The Filthy Rich. What struck me about that is, I think it's in West Palm, so you've got the extremely rich people living in relatively close proximity to underdeveloped poor neighborhoods, and that was a lot of what it was teen girls, high school girls, can make a couple extra dollars, come over here and massage me, and then it obviously turns into something more. And what struck me about that was that a lot of that was happening at the time that I was in high school in Florida. So these girls look exactly like the people that I went to high school with. Exactly. And the other thing, before that, the only exposure to human trafficking that I had was on the legislative side. We pay attention to laws that are proposed. And here in Florida, one of the things, like, we're trial lawyers, we, sue businesses, we sue people who cause harm to other people. One of the things that's been discussed about is legislation to make hotels and places where people are trafficked responsible in some way for that. And I know that like never ends up going through because of the huge, hospitality lobby in the state of Florida.
Yeah.
But I believe some legislation did go through, not that where we could hold businesses responsible, but it did have some regulations on like training for hospitality workers and things like that. And I wondered if our guests could speak to any of what's going on with that.
Yeah. Because honestly, I mean, it would still be just in my world, in our world as personal injury lawyers, I would still be looking at it as any other case. Was there negligent supervision? Was there, did you let this happen when you shouldn't have let this happen? Did you turn a blind eye to it? So it'd just be any other form of negligence, but having a specific law, directed toward human trafficking would, I think, help go far. Diane, one of the things that came up in that breakfast that you and I hosted was that they're working with the truckers to try, because a lot of these people move through truck stops and rest stop areas and that sort of thing, and they're moved that way. And I thought to myself, ooh, I bet those truckers may be in on this. But honestly, there's a network of them that are trying to help put a stop to this human trafficking, and they've got eyes and ears out there. So can you say more about that, or some of the solutions, or some of the partners in this effort to end this?
Absolutely. We are aware of truckers having their own language, through the CB code, and being able to try to get help for individuals that they learn that they're needing help. And I think that they're educating each other as well, what to look for. And one of the things that we were working on and hoping to get some power behind was being able to put the 1-800 number in the restrooms in the truck stop areas, as well as restaurants and hotels and things like that. And Rose is correct. Trying to go after these large hotel industries and what have you, their lobbyists are just too powerful. And it's just unfortunate that you would lobby to try to keep people doing what they're doing, even though it's wrong. But a lot of truckers and travelers are beginning to take notice and pay attention and reach out to try to help.
Well, I will tell you my personal bent on this, and I've told my partners this for the past year or so, but I said, when I make John Morgan money, I want to legalize sex work. Okay, he's done his medical marijuana, and he's doing the restoration of the felons' rights and paying their fees. Well, when I have that kind of money thrown around, I really do. And I've thought about that deeply. And I believe anything, when you push it underground, that's when you get the criminal elements and the exploitation. I do believe that a lot of these vices that we have hangups on, they're just, some people who just are inflexible and not willing to move on. But I would like to see some legalized form of some of these things that are done, to where women can have some protections, that they can get some health care, they have their dignity with their job, because people pay for sex. This is not new information.
That way they can at least be less afraid,
They can be less afraid
if they're in a bad situation.
They don't end up with a criminal record doing these sorts of things. So, while I say that with an overarching, I want to legalize sex work, what I'm really getting at is, let's put this in the light of day, because this is not going anywhere. It disproportionately affects women, which is my passion in the world, is to protect and promote women and girls. Very simple mission statement. It's what I get up for every day. But I want to see something, and it needs to probably be something radical, because the way we're doing it, just chasing these people, we're just making a bigger mousetrap. They're becoming smarter mice. And so this is just a thing that's just going on and on. But I think if there was not a market for it, if it weren't so underworld, maybe things would be different, like there are in some European countries. I don't know, but I want to do something to change it. Let's focus now, and I don't know if Diane, Micheala, who wants to talk about this, but how can we help? How can we sit here and not just wring our hands about it and actually do something?
Well, I'll start, and Micheala, you can finish, because Micheala is continuing in that work, and I am a very strong supporter of that work. A lot of times people think money helps, and money does help. Money helps to buy services. The Open Doors Outreach Network provides funding to the 32 counties to get direct services to help these individuals to come out of that life and to help them get straight. Many times they need medical help, they need dental help, they need counseling. They need a lot of things. They need restoration, try to get their families back together, to try to get their children back. A lot of that, they need legal help. And Dana, that's an area that you could really help in leading other lawyers to try to help these individuals fight for their rights back, fight for their families back, fight for their lives back. That could really be a big help. Education is another one. We need to educate people, like you all said, that you were basically ignorant to what was actually going on. Ignorancy can be fixed, because once you know about an issue, you're no longer ignorant to it. So education is really good, to know what to look for, to know what to do when you think you see something. You'll see something, say something, and I add do something as well. And then also advocate on behalf of these individuals when they're finding themselves on the way to jail for doing some things that they may have been under the influence of others or under the influence of drugs or being threatened or what have you. Advocate for them to be able to escape that life. And because the pimps and the Johns, they have their own network. I remember going through training and learning about the pimp circle. You ever heard of such a thing, where one pimp takes care of the other pimp's people? Because if they step out of line, then as a pimp in this little network, he gets them back in line, and then he tells the pimp.
You don't want a revolution on your hands. You got to keep these people in line.
Yeah. So it's that kind of thing. Those are some of the things that you can do right now. And Micheala, you can probably add to that.
Yeah, so I totally agree with what Diane is saying. I think, certainly reporting, we always encourage people to report to the Florida Abuse Hotline. That number is 1-800-962-2873. That's critical. Anyone who knows, suspects, etc., should call and report. I think for this particular group, when we're talking about records expungement, it's very, very important, because you all have the expertise to know about what it is to try to find a job, try to find a place to live, etc. If you have a criminal record that you have not been able to have expunged. And I can tell you from personal experience in working with individual survivors that even people who have very specialized help, it can take years for that to happen. You can't really progress and continue to stay out of exploitative situations or completely if you are constantly under duress and in a need to actually fulfill your needs. And I think, combating some of these myths about what, in particular about sex trafficking, but labor trafficking as well, and really kind of, opening our eyes and talking about this issue for what it is. So kind of what you were saying, Dana, kind of bring this out into the light. People need to know that this is happening to the kids next door. This is happening in, I live in Benton Hills in Tallahassee, and I'm quite sure there have been exploited people here. And I know that I'm not alone in that. And then, look for vulnerabilities. And, I would be happy at any time to share, ideas or thoughts on what vulnerabilities look like and what signs are. We need to communicate that with our educators and with our legislators. Our legislators are so important. The Attorney General has a statewide council on human trafficking. A lot of people are involved. We need to have strong legislation. Florida is already leading in that, and we need to have policy implementation that's really going to assist survivors.
These are all great things, and I think there's something that just about everybody can do about this. I just think of how insidious it is. It probably starts out simple enough, like it did with Renata, Carrie's guest on the show. She was just kind of thinking she had a boyfriend and have a little fun, and then she goes to this event and becomes friends with another girl who's already involved in this recruiting. And then the first time Renata gets raped, they give her crack to kind of, deal with the shock from this. And the next thing you know, she's crack addict. Now they got her. So, I think the awareness piece, like you said, you live in Benton Hills, it could be in your neighborhood. I remember when I first moved here in the early 90s, they busted a prostitution ring in Killarn, and it was all the thing,
Yeah.
But when my daughter was in college and when she was undergrad, she had some roommates who were on that sugar daddy website.
Mm-hmm.
And so they go out with these guys, almost always older, and are you going out? Are you having sex? Are you doing a little this and that? Or are you just company? I don't know. But in exchange for it, this guy's paying your rent. He's paying your books, your tuition, stuff like that. I just think there's just these little things that are like questionably legal, probably okay, that probably are a springing board for getting these girls who might not otherwise be vulnerable to this. Maybe they didn't come from, you know, they didn't have a marriage fall apart as a young mother like Renata did, or maybe they didn't have problems getting along with their very rigid parents that they fled from as children. These are just straight up, you know, middle class girls. So stop looking down your nose at it, thinking that it can't affect you or anybody that you know. It can. And educate yourself. I would love to see a bunch of people, you know, I'm going to propose this. I was just thinking now, I'm going to propose it to the women lawyers. How many people know about record expungement? How many, and I'm going to ask the judges, how many of y'all can help us walk this through? And then let's get some volunteers and let's just start helping some people do this. Because the biggest problem about being in the criminal justice system, it's demoralizing. Of course, it's horrible, all the things you go through and maybe doing time, being on probation, those sorts of things, but it's what you're left with. Now I'm a felon. Now I've got even fewer opportunities than I had before I got into this mess. You know, now I have even fewer opportunities for a legit job, you know, and then what does that make you feel about yourself when you can't even get a job and pay taxes and you have to do everything under the table? Do you feel like a really good person? Or you walk around with your back straight? No, you're not. So you're more susceptible of falling right back into that. Micheala, do a lot of people get out or try to get out and then get back into that life?
Re-victimization is very common, and for just the reasons that you're talking about. First of all, you know, many people have a relationship with their trafficker. I think some of the scenarios that we've mentioned is when someone considers their trafficker their boyfriend, for example. There's a big emotional you know, connection that trafficker knows how to supply for that survivor. So if we have kids or, you know, individuals out there that are vulnerable, have been traumatized, or looking for connection, are looking to have their basic needs met, you know, if you think about the hierarchy of needs, and they're finding someone that, you know, pulls up to them and says, hey, you know, I'll take care of you and we're going to establish this relationship. This is often, it's beyond just, you know, an exploitation thing. It's actually a relationship. Yeah. And so people, it is very, very common for people to come in and out. And that what's important about the things that we do with Open Doors Outreach Network is that we provide services based on what the survivor wants and for as long as they are eligible for services, which, so conceptually you could have someone from the age of 10 all the way until 24. And we don't have a time limit or a time stamp on how we provide those services. And we really focus on them being on survivor centered. So, you know, you'll probably notice I use the word survivor a lot. And, you know, that's one other kind of message that I'd like to put out there is to focus on people as survivors and not as criminals. Yeah. To focus, to see the pain, the exploitation that they have experienced, and focus on that in terms of meeting those needs and having an open mind, so that, yeah, we're not looking down our nose at anyone, and that we're really able to see this stuff when it's happening. Yeah.
I want to thank you all for participating today. I want to go around one more time and just hear from each one of our panelists, just a final wrap up. Carrie, after hearing this today and after interviewing Renata, what are your thoughts or closing thoughts today?
Well, I have one more thing to say about boys.
Sure.
You know, as the mom of boys, I'm always thinking about them. And I have a case where a boy was a teenager and he was online on a website called Grindr. And he was exploring his sexuality, wasn't really sure, you know, of his orientation or what he wanted from his sexuality. And he was solicited by several men through Grindr. And one of whom, well, anyways, we wound up developing a lawsuit as a result of it. And obviously he was very profoundly impacted by his experiences with these men through Grindr. And I think that we all need to be aware that online solicitation is very real for kids because they're on social media all the time. Yeah. They're not really sure, you know, who they are yet or what they want, and not really sure of the parameters of social media. It can be very, very dangerous. So I think as parents need to be educated about what all these different social media platforms are, what their kids are doing, who's talking to them, because they can get catfished very easily.
Easy.
And, you know, I never heard of Grindr until I had this case. So I'm in the process of educating myself to know what all these, you know, Snapchats and everything are that my kids are going to be on. So I can be aware of that and prevent them from getting solicited.
Yeah. And they could be on their device talking to these monsters in the backseat of your minivan.
Yes.
Do you understand that? Just because your child is within your ability to see them and touch them and hear them does not mean some monster is not in their ear grooming them right now. So as busy as we are, especially all of us women, you are probably working in and outside the home. You're trying to be a homeschool teacher, for God's sake. You're trying to keep all those balls in the air. And you think, and you have this false sense of safety sometimes because you can see, feel, touch, hear your children. So you gotta take control of that, limit the time, or put on these. I don't know how to tell you this, but I bet there are people who have programs or there's ways to monitor this thing. But just know that you don't know everything that they're doing, and that you need to be more dialed in with it. Rose, do you have some final thoughts today?
Well, just that, we try and focus on this show and in this group on being solution oriented. And so coming from a relative place of ignorance to learning a little bit to even be able to talk intelligently about this today, I'm hoping to, find some more resources. I hope our guests will share some resources that we can share to our group so we can keep working on this.
I appreciate that, Rose. Lori, any final remarks from you on this?
Something that kind of struck me with this is there's some common elements of people that go into this, not for everyone, and that's that their basic needs, their needs in life are not being met. And just like for my cousin, she struggled. Someone came up as a savior, was breaking this cycle of what she was going through. And within 6 months, her life just went downhill because she saw this. And I'm just seeing that pattern in this. And so now I start thinking, I go down a rabbit hole. We need better social systems. We need this. We need to start taking care of each other a little bit better, so that our needs are met and our basics, are met. So that's where my head is right now.
I love that. That's the bottom line on all of these EmPower hours. We need to take care of each other. 100%. Let me hear one more time from Micheala, if you have any closing remarks, and then we'll go to our Honorable Commissioner and close out the EmPower Hour.
Certainly. I really appreciate the opportunity. Please look us up, Voices for Florida Open Doors Outreach Network. And we work with lots of other, we're a network, so we work with a lot of other organizations to really get out the word, provide the services, and, get out there and vote. Yeah. Talk to your legislators, talk to your representatives, and say that this is an important issue, that we need it to be funded, we need it to be legislated, and we need it to be in the forefront of the work that we're doing.
I love that. And I'll tell you what, that's the reason I got so turned on and ramped up to support Diane Williams-Cox when she told me she was going to run. I've known Diane probably about 10 years now, I reckon. But I just thought, all these people who run for office, they tell you a lot of good stuff when they want you to support them, but then you look at, what do they do when they get in there? Do they forget all these lofty goals that they had or whatever? And Diane Williams-Cox does not. She keeps working every day for the things that she said she cares about. And I knew she was the first person I wanted to reach out to when we decided to talk about human trafficking today. So thank you so much for making the time for this today, Diane. And we're going to try to promote it and get it out to as many people as we can. But what are your closing thoughts today?
Thank you again so much, Dana, for bringing this to the forefront, because you're right. We need to bring it to the light of day and not push it to the darkness. Before we close, I want Micheala to give you the that national hotline number one more time so that your listeners will have it, so that we can make sure that it's where people can actually report. And I would say, Carrie, I'm the mother of 3 sons, and so and grandmother of 6. You have to go looking for it. They're not gonna give it to you. You got to go looking to see what's wrong. Assume that something is not right. Go looking for it. Check those phones, check those computers, check those bedrooms. Just look for it. And then when you find it, don't kill them. Educate them. Talk to them about why these things are not right. Because if you don't have get an understanding with them, you push them to the predator. So we don't want to push them to the predator. So please talk to your children, talk to your young adults, and help them to understand that you have their best interest in heart. You love them and you want nothing to happen to them. And so make sure they know that you are the person that they can trust. and that they can come and talk to you. They don't need another family. You are their family, and you're the one that's going to keep them out of trouble and keep them safe. It's been a pleasure to be with you today, Dana, as always. We always have a lot of fun. Thank you for your undying support all these years, and I'm happy to come to the causes that you promote, because you are a great citizen in our community, and your firm is always on the list of whatever's going on in the community. You're a sponsor for the good stuff, and so we want to make sure that Basic and Brook could, I didn't know you wasn't making John Morgan money, but whatever we need to do to help you make John Morgan money.
I'm working on it, girl.
We want you to make some of that money, because we need you to do just what you said. Bring this stuff to the light of day.
Yeah.
So let us know what we can do to help.
No, 100%. And Micheala, what is that number? Did you say it's 800-962-2873?
That's the Florida Abuse Hotline. And there's also the National Human Trafficking Hotline, which is 888-373-7888.
And just one more final thing to come back around to what Diane said and what Carrie mentioned. And it's not just your boys and their vulnerability, but those of you who are parenting boys and have men's ears, tell them to look out for it. Look out for this. Keep your eyes open, because other boys and other men listen to each other. So if you see a woman being exploited, or you see a man who's exploiting women, and you see this kind of thing, go say something, do something, because believe it or not, people will listen to you. So raise our boys and young men to be leaders, not followers. So thank you all today. This has been a great show. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Micheala, Denny, from the Open Doors Outreach Network, and of course, the Honorable Diane Williams-Cox, City Commissioner, Leon, City of Tallahassee. So you have all full plates, full calendars, and you made time for us, and so we appreciate it. We're going to do our share and get the word out and try to help as many women and girls and young boys too as we can. So thank you all today, and tune in next week for another EmPower Hour